for the way I need to heal. I gotta move.
This has been a topic that I struggled with even considering talking about. So many people were apprehensive about even touching on this issue because they were concerned about, how it may appear, them sharing their thoughts about their mama, their mothers. So they said, Shekhinah, how could you be a part of a women's centered organization and you're talking about toxic femininity and you're talking about mother-child tensions? And I said, well, why not? Why are we not talking about it? Because it's a fact of life. It's a real thing that goes on, and we need to talk about it more, because if we're not talking about it, we're not fixing the problems that continue to go unaddressed. And the number one thing about me for all women is accountability, and that goes to everyone, really, not just women, men, everybody. You need to be accountable for your behavior. So it started as a meme that was shared that said, your mama doesn't like you. And I could not, for the life of me, I shared it because I know so many situations that it's applicable to. And there was a long discussion that came out of it. And there were multiple people inboxing me saying, Shekhinah, can we talk about this issue, mother-daughter tension? Like they're going through things with their mother or have gone through things with their mom. And it's something that has gone unaddressed. It hasn't been talked about. And I'm going to talk about it because I can. So don't be mad at me. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm only bringing truth to the scenario. So if you have an issue with any of the things that I said, you should have an issue. Refute anything that I say with research. Most of what I'm going to share with you will be fact-based, some anecdotal, but mostly facts, because that's what I like to thrive in, the fact-based narrative. So, all right, I'm gonna give it a couple more minutes for a couple people to join. That they said they kind of wanted to be in their live. So if they had any questions or comments that they wanted for me to answer while I'm live, then I'll do that. I'm gonna keep it as short as possible. If you like what you see, share it, comment, and subscribe to some of my channels. I'm going to do a restream of this on my Patreon, my YouTube, so a lot of the other social media systems that I am currently on. Okay. All right. So we're talking about mother-child tensions. This is No Chicanery. And No Chicanery is this interactive talk series that people have been asking me to do something like this for years. And I have completely decided, I was against it for a long time because, one, I don't know if I'm qualified to talk on some of these issues, and, but I try to be objective and as unbiased as possible. So I'm going to keep my other screen open just so in the event that I have any comments that I could kind of be abreast of that. All right, let's go. The pending question that's been asked: who are more likely to abuse children? And oftentimes we look at men as the number one suspect because we look at men as, I guess they're more physically stronger, they have testosterone, and there have been more reports of, violence in terms of criminality, but research, fact-based evidence has shown that more than half of perpetrators in terms of abuse against children are women, 53.8% in fact. So this is something that you can't argue with. This is information that, I'm only bringing to the forefront because it's true. So don't shoot the messenger. This is just me giving facts. So I have the thing, no more wire hangers. Is your mother your bully? Is your mother someone that you trust? Is your mother someone that you feel comfortable sharing things with? And this goes for male, women, all genders. This goes for all genders. More times than not, there are a lot of people that say they don't feel comfortable sharing things with their mother. They don't feel supported. They don't feel loved. They don't feel trusted. They feel like if they tell their mother something, it's probably going to go to their mother's friends or to the church or to the other parent, or just in a way to humiliate that child. And it's funny, I had to bring up Mommy Dearest as a as a photo op to use to demonstrate how insane that narrative is, but how true it is for many people. And some people, you don't have to wait to go to school before you find your first bully. Your first bully for some people can be your mother. And there is research behind that as well. This picture comes from a famous movie, Carrie, and the original, not the remake. And the original kind of speaks on Carrie's mom. She was very like ultra religious, and she spiritually guilted and shamed her daughter for doing the things that a teenager is going to want to do, interact with friends, maybe go to a dance party, because they're at the stages of their trajectory developing to wanting validation among their peers. So there are stages of validation. And typically, your first stage of validation is with your parents. And for whatever reason, if you're not getting that from your parent, then you're seeking that elsewhere. And oftentimes the next phase is, your peer groups. And Carrie, she just wanted to go to the dance. She wasn't trying to smoke crack. She wasn't trying to gang bang. She wasn't trying to do anything illicit. She just wanted to be a child. And for what, her mother didn't see that as important. And she constantly threw religion in to take a stab at her daughter, literally, figuratively. Another famous, I like to use film because it's relatable, and a lot of film is based on real life situations. Sexual abuse and forced diets. We look at the movie Precious, where Gabourey Sidibe's character was being both sexually, physically, and, nutritionally abused by her mother. And, she was, raped multiple times by her biological father, and the mom, by default did nothing and allowed that to go on in her household. And she just said, well, who's going to love me? And I'm just like, this is your daughter. You're supposed to love and take care and protect and nurture and provide. And you're failing to do that, which is why the social service interventions are coming in to periodically check up, and they are missing the fact that there's a 15-year-old girl that's having a second child with no father in sight, but the mother's there receiving system supports, yet no one can account for the whereabouts of the father because the mom hated her daughter. And this is a film, but a lot of this is based on real situations. Oh boy, Drew Barrymore and her mother. Now that's real. That's real. Neglect, manipulation. Drew Barrymore's Hollywood life, she actually was the first person I ever heard of in history to divorce her own parents. And oftentimes people are saying, well, abuse is one way, but people don't think about the neglect. People don't think about the manipulation and, the exploitation. This was a young girl who grew up in Hollywood, and the tumultuous relationship between her and her parents, existed because they wanted to continue to exploit this child. Sadly enough, she got away from her parents, but the damage ensued. And, who knows the psychological trauma that may continue to ensue as a result of this tension between herself and her mother. Coming from where? Who knows? But it definitely exists. Now, this is Penny from Good Times, Penny and her mom. Physical abuse. This is a real thing. A lot of physical abuse goes unreported because people fail to perceive women as perpetrators of physical violence, a narrative that should absolutely go away, because violence knows no gender. A violent person is just a violent person, regardless. It's just a violent person. and Penny from Good Times, we knew what Penny's mom was doing. And she said, oh, she made every excuse in the world as to why she continued to beat this girl. And it just is unjustified. It's unconscionable. It's actually abominable for any human being to bring a child into the world to physically abuse and harm that child in any way. Most recent would be Vanessa Bryant and her mom, the late Kobe Bryant's widow. And this, you would think that her husband and her daughter both were killed in a very crazy helicopter crash last year. And we're in a global pandemic. And her mother, her emotionally abusive, unsympathetic, apathetic, unrighteous human being, decides she wants to take her daughter to court to sue her for money when she just lost her. I guess her granddaughter is just consequential of her own self-preservation, because she prioritized that over everything, her money, her securing her own bag, which I think is insane. And intergenerational abuse. We think of Lisa Ray McCoy and her mom, and that relationship as they were on Ayanna Fix My Life. And it was almost like a competitive, like jealous, envious competition between the two. And I'm just like, these are beautiful women, but something is psychologically missing. There has to be screws and marbles that are just not there when you are competing with your own child with the father. And then once the father dies, because the father, I guess, and Lisa McCoy had a close relationship, now you want to punish her, financially abuse her, emotionally abuse her, because she's not doing what you think she should be doing. Insane. According to the Pew Research Center, about 1 in 5 children are living with a single mother. And, those numbers haven't really changed much. In fact, it's starting to rise because, for many different factors, but it's just, a lot of children are being raised by mothers. So when we want to blame absent fathers for not being there, either financially, emotionally supportive, we have to also bring accountability to the mothers raising children in traumatized, uninhabitable circumstances. They can't go above reproach. They also are held accountable for not doing their due diligence to protect, nurture, provide, and care and rear for their own children. So it's just something you have to think about, from biochemical standpoint. They always say, there's a lot of people that say, not they always, some people say, when you have a child, your mothering instinct kicks in. Well, I don't know about that, because if the majority of child abuse perpetrators are women, I'm trying to determine whether or not their biological tick kicked in, and the mothering tick. I don't know if it's something that's just innate. I think it's something you learn. Maybe it comes in time, but I don't know if it's innate in all people. Thankfully, there are several people who decided to be, good mothers to their children. And nearly half of Black children are in, about 47% African-American children in America, single parent households, single led households. For, children, and it's crazy because we make up about 13% of the US population, yet almost half of our households are being led by single parents, primarily mothers. Why is that? You ever asked yourself what the damage that does, the effects of that? And a good portion of those children end up in abuse situations, which causes impaired brain development, poor physical health, psychological issues, relationship issues. Sometimes people become abusive to others. Substance abuse issues. And when you really factor in those problems, the effects of this, you're dealing with adults who have unaddressed issues, unaddressed problems that haven't been corrected because they're still, dealing with psychological trauma of their childhood. So I have to ask, these mother-child tensions, what the hell starts this stuff? The number one thing I had to say is mental illness, definitely immaturity, and immaturity has no age. I don't think development and age are synonymous. A lot of people think that's the case, but it's not. You can have someone that's in their 70s and they have the mentality of a 16-year-old because for whatever reason, they are not, advancing at the appropriate stages of their trajectory. Some people have unrealistic expectations of what it is to be a mother, a parent. And, oftentimes there's disdain for the co-parent, a jealousy, personal inadequacies. So now, because you have issues, you have unchecked issues and insecurities, you now want to utilize your position of authority and take it out on your child in many ways. It could be aggressive ways, passive ways, emotional ways, just ways, access, a limited access to resources, intergenerational trauma. Doesn't excuse it, but it is consequential. Isolation and a lack of education. So it's important for people to really think about becoming a parent and all of the responsibility that is required, that's necessary in order to be a good parent. Because you can become a parent just by biologically creating a child. It doesn't mean that your child is going to fare well. It doesn't mean that your child will, you'll be a great parent to that child. So it's up to you to really do some soul searching. So before you people out there in the world pressure individuals to have babies, why don't you make sure that they are psychologically well, financially stable, they have a support system, they have access to resources, because, having a baby is cute, but having an abused, emotionally abused, physically abused, traumatized child that grows up to be an adult to reinforce this narrative in generations, that's not cute at all. So I have a few solutions for people who exist in this space. Mental health therapy, let's start there. I think it's crazy. You need a license to drive. You need a license to get married. You don't need a license to have a baby, to raise a child. You don't need a license for that. You could just, do what you want. And I think some people have this idea that they own their child. You don't own a child. A child does not belong to you. Therefore, it is up to you to ensure that when you do decide to take the undertaking of parenthood, you have support systems and you are accountable and you listen and you're actively listening. You have changed behavior and stress management. That's the number one culprit for a lot of people is stress management, that they, for whatever reason, they have issues in terms of managing the efficacy of their household because they're not having supports. So without the supports, you're kind of at the mercy of your own devices. And sometimes that's not always a great thing because you can ultimately be the demise of your own child. So self-care is important. They say your first mind is to protect your child, but I think your first mind is to self-care for you to be present to, provide and protect and nurture a child. So let's talk about it. People had a lot of things to say regarding their parenting, and I opened the door for any comments, any questions, any thoughts about it. I mean, this mother-child tension narrative, we need to work on dispelling that narrative because it's not healthy for anybody involved. This word is good. Thoughts. Yeah, because abuse is not always physical. It's emotional. It's, social. Some parents are really super passive aggressive. I even watched The Water Boy and his relationship with his mom. I like to use movies because they're relatable instead of talking about real life situations. But when I think about that scenario, she was extremely emotionally abusive to her son to the point where he had some sort of mental arrested development. It was almost like he was autistic a little bit, it seemed, his character. And he could not manage social situations because of his interactions with his mother. I just thought about that. Parents, stop resenting your children. Mothers, because we're talking about mothers today. And I'm not saying that fathers don't do it, but we're not talking about fathers today. We're talking about the mothers. It's your responsibility to, it is absolutely your responsibility to take care of your children, to love your children, to respect their existence, to honor the responsibility that you chose when you decided to have them. You have to take care of that. That's your responsibility when you decided to become a parent. That's what you signed up for. Therefore, I know one day somebody said, Shekhinah, you're going to look back and listen to this. I sure am. This is why I didn't have children before I was ready to have children, because I wanted to have certain things in place. But that's just me. I'm not knocking anybody for whatever choices that they make, but just know you're accountable for how you treat your children. And that cycle of intergenerational behavior that you learned and that you accepted and you now perpetuated, it is now going to be passed on to the next generation if you do not check yourself and improve upon who you are. That's water. Water is good for you. So we want people to be better parents, so that we can have better children, so that we can have a better society. And in the same sense, mother-child tensions, it requires for you to also hold your children accountable to what you've taught them by being examples. You can't tell your kid, well, I don't want you to drink and drive, but you drink and drive. You have to be an example and not a hypocrite. So, and I get what I know some people are like, well, I'm an adult and I should be able to do, all right, well, check how your adulthood is going to impact your child, because they are not going to just listen to what you're saying. They are going to see what you're doing and they are going to follow what you're doing, because what you're doing is the example, not what you're saying. So you better check yourself. Your mom hated how close you and your stepfather was. You know what? That's another thing too, like this jealousy. I find that some women, this is similar to like the Lisa Ray McCoy situation. Lisa Ray McCoy's mother was jealous of her relationship with her father. And I guess the father had like, he dealt with other women. He was not faithful, but he had a lot of money. And she was like, well, you're taking out on me because I have a relationship with him, but you chose to stay. And why did you stay? You stayed because it was worth staying. You know what I'm saying? So you stayed and you didn't want to be accountable, but you want to take your frustration out on them. A parent that'll say, you're just like your daddy. Well, I don't know what the daddy was like, but you chose to lay down and have a child with the daddy. The daddy didn't, you did that. You chose that. Where is your accountability? This is the most toxic thing in femininity. And people say, Shekhinah, you know, the toxic femininity, you know, that's a terrible thing to talk about. Why is it terrible to talk about? We see so many issues of women blaming men. We do it a lot. Even I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of pointing a finger, and I will justifiably point a finger objectively against something that I see is incorrect and wrong and foul. We got to do the same thing when we as women are toxic. And the only way that we can correct some of the issues in our community is if we start taking accountability for what we're doing, the examples that we are setting for our children, and the behaviors and how we are conducting ourselves. We can't expect for the community to respect us. And if we can't honor and respect the positions we have, if we are parents and people in the community, we got to stand up for something. Wow, many things play a part in why mothers have issues with their daughters. Yeah, yup. And let me tell you, a lot of it is because those are their inadequacies. The inadequacies that some of these mothers have is rooted in their insecurity, because at whatever stage of their development has been arrested, they're hoping to have that validation in that man. And when that man fails to provide that attention, that thing that they're looking for, they're going to blame whatever attention is being split. And oftentimes it could be the daughter, you know, and treating your daughters and your sons like human beings. They're not property. You don't own them. They don't belong to you in the sense that you possess them and you can abuse them, and you in the attitudes and the actions that you're inflicting upon innocent people. So I just want to, you know, briefly state that and set the record straight. These mother-child tensions, I don't know if we could fully address all of these issues in one session, in one webinar. I just wanted to bring it to the forefront because I am absolutely against it. I think it's abhorrent. And there was something that came out recently with you know, but this is not a unique story. There are women who have children who, for whatever reason, they will abuse these children and then they will murder these children. Why are they doing this? I don't know, but they do it. And again, it goes back to the thing that I always ask. If having a child ensures that you will develop this motherly instinct all of a sudden, why is it not kicking in with these individuals who are inflicting harm against children? When does it happen? Are they broken? Or is that something that you have to learn? What do you think, if anybody could drop a solution for what they believe would be ideal to address this ongoing problem? Because it's not something that's going away. I wish it would. I wish it would go away. I wish racism would go away. It's not going away right now. It's still here. I hope that this gave you people a little bit of things to talk about, something to think about. Think about your relationship with your mother. Think about the relationships with your friends and their mothers, and family members and their mothers. If someone tells you that they have a negative relationship with their mother, don't invalidate that person's experience because your relationship isn't the same way. Why don't you give them an ear and listen to them and provide some solutions, or just an ear? All right, I think I'm done with this session today. No Chicanery just started today. I'm excited about that. Thank you guys for joining. And I hope to, you know, do some really fun, innovative subjects in the coming future. All right, love, peace, and hair grease.
For the way you make you feel, and I won't apologize for the way I need to heal. I gotta move,
Regulate, modulate, allocate.